everyone, it's the Mystic Midwife here helping birth new self-awareness through astrology. Thanks for joining me this week. This week I'll be reporting on the week of January 19th through the 25th, and we have some really interesting aspects coming up, and I think you'll notice a real palpable change in the energy this week. We have the sun moving into the sign of Aquarius. We also have a new moon in Aquarius. And we top off the end of the week with the beginning of the Chinese New Year, with the year of the metal rat. But before we get into some of that, I always like to just take a little bit of a reflection on the past week and just want to check in, see how you all are doing. I have to admit that I'm still pretty much riding the waves of our Mercury square Uranus, which was on the 18th exact, and I'm feeling like I got 1,000 things running through my brain right now. So I don't know if any of you also felt that electric sort of pop of insight and maybe a lot of different things happening in the realm of communication, whether it's emails, maybe you just want to talk fast, maybe there's just a lot going on. I might imagine maybe you're also feeling that as well. So in the spirit of that sort of sparkling mental energy, I have some readings I want to share today on some of the upcoming aspects, but I also want to try to keep it a little bit shorter than last week, so we'll see how we'll do. But yeah, so that was at the end of last week, but I don't know how you felt prior to that. There could have been some emotional ups and downs, still obviously with a lot of these Saturn-Pluto dynamics in the background. But we did get some nice insights with Uranus here and there, making aspects to Venus, and again, of course, Mercury at the end of the week. So, just want to check in, see how you're feeling before we dive into the new week. Okay, so let's take just like an overview here. What to expect this week for January 19th to the 25th. It's always interesting when you create these big picture stories for the collective, because obviously we each have our own unique journeys and they fit into this bigger picture in many different ways. So always understand that while these are collective dynamics that are going on around you, always pay attention to your own instinct and the things that are unfolding inside of you, because that's always the most important. That said, if we still think a little bit broadly, I think we're going to start to feel like this whole eclipse cycle that began on Christmas with that first solar eclipse on Christmas Day, it's starting to wind up because we're going to have a new moon in Aquarius. So we're really past the last quarter square of the moon. We're moving into the end of this lunar cycle. And so a lot of the intensity with regard to where our emotions were and what we were fixated on over the past several weeks here, that's really going to start to come to a close, and we're going to get a little bit of a new perspective. So we also get some additional bumps of assistance with that, right? I feel like the past 2 weeks have been really nice in helping us break out of some of these maybe more challenging emotional ruts or big changes that we need to see happen in our lives with some crackle pop of this more sparkling air energy and some insights. So we're going to continue to see that happening this week as well. So you may find yourself vacillating between sort of, down in the trenches and feeling through stuff, but then getting these insights and feeling like you can move forward because there's something to move toward and there's something worthwhile. All right, so let's take a look at each of the days of the week. So I'm recording this today on Sunday, the 19th, and we have had the moon in Scorpio earlier in the day, but by the time I'm recording this, it's now moved into Sagittarius. And so we may feel a little bit just more of an emotional kick. Maybe we have a little bit of that excitement or zealous direction, a little bit more of a place where we can feel charged up, maybe not quite so deep down in the mire of our emotions and brooding reflectiveness that can sometimes come along with that moon in Scorpio. So some of that introspection and heaviness starts to shift throughout the day today on Sunday. So you may start to feel a little bit of a lightening up. And then we get even a bigger shift in the energy moving into the beginning of the week on Monday the 20th, because the sun will move into Aquarius, and that's at 6:55 a.m. That's Pacific time. And this is when we start to see the first noticeable break from all that intense Capricorn energy. We may have a little bit of a feeling of reprieve amidst some of this ongoing crunch that we're feeling. So I thought it might be nice to just hear a little bit about how some other astrologers have thought about the sign of Aquarius, just to get us thinking about what we might begin to anticipate in feeling and moving into the sign of Aquarius. And I'm going to be reading a small passage from The Inner Sky by Stephen Forrest when he just describes Aquarius, the water bearer. Freedom, that is the Aquarian endpoint. What is it? Individuality, the ability to choose our own path, to do what we want to do. Then he says, the water bearer's mortal enemy is the tribal instinct. If she succumbs, all is lost. She becomes just one more familiar character in the endless sitcom of our daily existence. Aquarius and conformity. They mix just about as well as peace and nuclear warheads. And so, he goes on to basically say that the water bearer, Aquarius, has absolute loyalty to the truth, and that any pressure that is felt, some of the pressure that is felt, really comes from this pressure to conform in an established pattern of behavior in the world around us, right? So if we start reflecting on that, start thinking about where might you feel that there are some patterns of behavior that you've taken on from your culture, broadly, maybe from your family of origin, other things that you've taken on as coping mechanisms over your life. What are some things that maybe you can now get some perspective on and simultaneously really understand the amount of pressure that you're put under given those thought structures, those patterns of behavior, and how can you really start to embrace and embody this Aquarian ideal, right, of freedom, of nonconformity, of having this broader perspective that's going to allow you to step out of those things that are really kind of a drag. So that's just a great start to the week. Then on Tuesday the 21st, we don't have any exact aspects. Of course, there's a lot of what I'm talking about this week happening, but nothing specific happening on that day. Though the moon does move into Capricorn that evening, so you may start to feel a little bit of that, I don't say emotional heaviness, but more of the intensity, like your willingness to get stuff done, maybe to sit down and get some work done. I mean, for me anyway, whenever the moon's in Cap, I just, that integrity to get that work done at a very basic level is there, but also just to be a little bit more serious and realistic. So maybe you get that broad perspective and then you can get pretty serious about it. That's just one way that you can start to feel these energies working this week. Okay, so then on Wednesday, we have the Sun in Aquarius now squaring Uranus and Taurus. So not only did we see echoes of this Aquarian, Uranian ideal with the Sun moving into Aquarius, but now we have the Sun squaring Uranus as well. And so I thought that it might be nice to just share a little bit from Richard Tarnas's Prometheus the Awakener, right, where he thinks that the archetype of Prometheus, sort of the stealer of fire from the gods to bring it to humanity, right, just at a very basic level to describe that, is much more of an apt description of the archetype behind the planet Uranus. So in this great little book here, he mentions what it's like for people who have a Sun Uranus aspect. And so we can just think about how we might start to see similar patterns or things coming out in our life this week, given this aspect. So he describes these people as those who are inventive or innovative in small ways, who were markedly out of the ordinary in some sense, but maybe not famously so, erratic and unpredictable persons, people who are who seek their own paths in life. Maybe they have a rebellious or eccentric temperament, and those who are drawn to unusual or exciting experiences and attracted to novel or radical ideas. So that's just a paraphrase of something from his book Prometheus the Awakener, not a direct quote. But the idea here is that there's that drive towards freedom, towards breakthrough, towards radical change. And with the square, it's really starting to put the pressure on. So what an interesting way to just bust into the sign of Aquarius with the Sun this week. And then it makes this aspect to Uranus, right? And so we just get hit again by this goal, like breaking through and finding a way for us to maybe cut out those patterns that weren't working in our lives. Maybe an opportunity to finally feel unstuck, right? And that's something that I think most people really strive for internally, and also, in different aspects and parts of their life as well, career, family life, whatever it might be. Where can you start to take some of that input from this Uranian archetype and see what you can break and push through that's been really holding you back? So that's happening on Wednesday. And then into Thursday, we have a really sweet aspect between Venus in Pisces and, Jupiter in Capricorn. So we have a sextile between Venus and Jupiter. So anytime that Venus meets Jupiter in any aspect, it's just this really lovely, sweet, sensual, creative, relational, soft transit, right? And it's even emphasized more because we have Venus in Pisces, right? Which already we described last week as this wonderful, sweet, compassionate Venus, very vulnerable. So it's really nice to have it making contact with that sextile to Jupiter in Capricorn. So we have that nice sort of little prize that we're moving toward after we've had some of the rough and tough Saturn, Pluto, etc. happening in Capricorn. And now we're starting to see these cracks of Uranian breakthrough. And then we get this nice sweet softness, right? It started last week with the Venus in Pisces, and now the Pisces making contact to Jupiter. All right. So then on Friday, that's when we see our new moon. So it's the official closing out of the eclipse cycle, the past lunar cycle, where maybe we had a lot of stuff kind of come to light, some big changes, some challenging things to work through. So we may begin to feel things change. And maybe that this actually is the beginning of 2020. Of course, there are always some ongoing cycles. There always are. But the hope here is that we are sort of released emotionally from whatever we were fixated on in that last lunar cycle and have this opportunity for something new. And again, right, the Aquarian, Uranian themes are reflected again because we have a new moon in Aquarius happening. And so that is just a really lovely touch where we have that opportunity to feel the fresh perspective, the detached, but in a good way, the ability to sort of see opportunities for change, perhaps, that we were looking for. And of course, any type of spark of insight that can only be gained from having that broad perspective and seeing really how everything is connected and maybe better seeing a path forward. So we close out the week on Saturday, the 25th, with a really nice sextile between Mars in Sagittarius and Mercury in Aquarius. So this is a really interesting change. It's not going to last for too long because Mercury doesn't hang out in one spot for very long, as we know. But I thought I would read just a little bit of what the Mercury-Mars dynamic may feel like. And this is a passage from the book The Archetypal Universe by Ren Butler. And the principles of Mercury-Mars, he states, are a sharp and passionate mind, mental energy and determination, a talent for clear and decisive communication or pointed humor, a tendency towards sharp opinions and argument, rash and heated words, pointed sarcasm or insults, and hectic mental stress. Right? So as you can see from that great description of this archetypal combination, you have the impetuous, impulsive, pushy, in a sense, nature of Mars combining with our capacity for communication and connection. And so, in a sense, we're almost seeing our will and our desires really kind of overlap with that capacity to communicate, and they're one, right? So maybe you don't really check yourself, it just kind of spills out. You get that pushy nature. So while it might allow you to be quite decisive and get things done in all the ways we just mentioned, just beware of the alternative. And, interestingly, it falls on the beginning of the Chinese New Year. So that is the day of the new year, the year of the metal rat. And I'm really, no expert in Chinese astrology, but the rat is the very beginning of the cycle. It's the first animal in their zodiacal cycle. And it also I believe, is the animal that wins the race in the sort of mythological race to the finish. So it's just interesting to see these different patterns and archetypes of newness, big, broader perspective, maybe an ability to cut through some of these older patterns. It's really echoed in multiple ways throughout the week. So I would just really encourage you to lean into all these new potential avenues that you may be finding, that may be occurring to you, despite maybe some of the ongoing emotional struggle, and see if you can hold both of these trends and themes for this coming week at once. What can you start to see that's coming in an expanded mental capacity? How can it filter down into what you've been doing? How can what you've been working with emotionally sort of inform maybe the things that you find most relevant when you see a ton of different options because you're inspired in so many different ways? So see if you can really start to balance these two major themes of the ongoing emotional processing and then closing out of this eclipse cycle with this brand new fresh wave of Uranian and Aquarian, and then the sweet, of course, Venusian, Jupiterian themes as well. So my hope is that for everyone this week, it's going to start to feel a little different, a little more fresh, despite the ongoing responsibilities and pressure we may feel, that we can have a little bit of a respite in the day-to-day and just in living with ourselves, not feeling so burdened constantly. So that's it. That's the horoscope for next week. And thank you for joining me. And I look forward to catching up in another week. All right. Have a good one. Bye-bye.